Thank you. On behalf of International Ministries, my colleagues who serve throughout the globe, I give you greetings. On behalf of your partner in ministry, Amos Health and Hope in Nicaragua, I bring you greetings and say hello. It is a gift for me to be here, to learn from you, to hear your stories, to see how God is alive and at work in your midst here in Beverly and throughout the world. And so thank you for the invitation. Quickly before I share, I'd like to just give you some visual glimpses of a bit of my work so that you can have an idea of what it is. And I feel honored and privileged to have been invited into the world and invited to table with people throughout the world. And it is at that table where I have experienced glimpses of grace. It is at those tables where my heart has been broken wide open. And so just to give you a chance to have a little glimpse of the table grace that I've experienced. Is there music? Thanks. So if you can imagine that there's a song in the background, we'll have to use our imaginations a lot, but the song that accompanies this, and if you want to hear it later, maybe we can get sound to it, but it is a song that talks about, Lord, I pray that you will break my heart so wide open that the world falls in. And that changes me. And I have been invited into stories where God has broken my heart wide open, and I have been healed and gotten better about what it means to live my life as an expression of the God who invites me to come to table and to be changed at the table. And so I want us to think about the passage that was read is from Isaiah 55, and Isaiah is a prophet poet and uses words to paint pictures and images that change us. And there was a writer who took scriptures and was also a poet, Eugene Peterson, who translated the scriptures into the Message. And the purpose for doing that was that sometimes we begin to hear the scriptures so much that they begin to stop impacting us and making us think. And so Eugene Peterson did a translation, and I would like to read that Peterson's translation. And I invite you into holy imagination. So as you hear the words, pay attention to the images that come forth in this passage, because poetry has a way to enter into us in different ways and see what God can do as God breaks us open in new ways. So it's Isaiah 55 from the Message. Hey there, all who are thirsty, come to the water. Are you penniless? Come anyways. Buy and eat. Come buy your drinks. Buy wine and milk. Buy without money, because everything's free. Why do you spend money on junk food, your hard-earned cash on cotton candy? Listen to me. Listen well. Eat only the best. Fill yourself with only the finest. Pay attention. Come close now. Listen carefully to my life-giving, life-nourishing words. I am making a lasting commitment with you, that same one that I made with David. It's sure, it's solid, it's enduring love. I set him up as a witness to the nations and made him a prince and leader, and now I'm doing it to you. You'll summon nations that you've never even heard of, and nations who've never even heard of you will come running. Because of me, your God, because the Holy One of Israel has honored you. Seek God while God can be found. Pray to God while God is close at hand. And let the wicked let go of their way of life, and evil their ways of thinking. Let them come back to God, God who is merciful. Come back to our God who is lavish with forgiveness. I don't think the way you think, and the way you work isn't the way that I work. This is God's decree. For as the sky soars high above the earth, so the way I work surpasses the way that you work, and the way that I think is beyond the way that you think. And just as rain and snow descend from the sky and don't go back until they have watered the earth, doing their work of making things grow and blossom like a garden, producing seed for farmers and food for the hungry, so will the words that come out of my mouth not come back empty-handed. They'll do the work that I sent them to do, and they'll complete the assignment I gave them. So that you will go out in joy, and you will be led into a whole and complete life. And the mountains and the hills will lead the parade. They will be bursting with songs. And all the trees of the forest will join in the procession, exuberant with applause. There will be no more thistles, but giant sequoias. No more thorn bushes, but stately pines, monuments to me, to God, living and lasting evidence of God. Did you see it? Did you see the trees in the parade? We'll fall out, we'll go, and trees and mountains will lead us in the singing. What a beautiful image that Isaiah paints of God's dream. God's dream of invitation, an invitation to the table to experience and connect with the God of the universe. This whole image of justice and goodness, making things right. Come and eat, all you who are thirsty, who are longing for life, longing for good things. God invites us into that kind of relationship, into that healing. And the way God goes about it is very different than we expect. God interrupts us, and God invites us to a parade, a celebration of hope. So I want to share with you just a few ways that I have been invited to this table of the world and how it has changed me. Last month, there was a Mapuche, a Mayan, a Mexican, a Cuban, a Colombian, a Chilean, a Guatemalan, and a North American sitting around a table. And they sang together, Cuando inhalo paz, cuando exhalo amor, cuando inhalo paz, cuando exhalo amor. Very different expressions of culture and story and experience, together around a table, recognizing that when they breathe in peace. And when they breathe out love. It was a beautiful glimpse of God's grace around a table where people came together to learn the ways of peace. And I was privileged to be one of those around that table. And as I listened to the experiences of folks who for centuries have not been invited to the table to have a speak voice, were able to share with one another their stories and to recognize that the same breath that they breathe in and the same air is what gives us all life. It was beautiful to be at table, to see the beauty of God's creation expressed in very different ways, but shared. And it reminded me that we, like Isaiah 55, can have glimpses of this dream of what it looks like. That happened because people shared, and people allowed that to happen. And 11 different countries were represented around tables where we spoke and learned from each other about ways of peace and transformation. And that song that we sang became what held that group together. And so when we dealt with difficult situations and difficult stories, together we would breathe in and breathe out and be grounded in that common life that we have together. Another thing that happened that I saw grace around this table of God that reminded me a lot of the last vision that Isaiah had was this bringing together. And so I was privileged just 2 weeks ago to be a part of the International Coalition Against Prostitution Global Conference. And it gathered 300 people throughout the globe who are working hands-on in anti-trafficking work, working with men and women and children who have been bought or sold or exploited in one way or another. And this was a group of 300 practitioners and survivors that gathered together to share life and story. And one of the things that we did, and I think you can see some of the pictures, is that I was able to facilitate a process, and I was told from a church that they had stained glass that had been in their garage or shed for the last 5 years. The church's stained glass windows were damaged by a propane explosion, and they kept the stained glass windows in their shed, and they were just collecting dust for 5 years. And they asked if I would be willing, if I wanted to take it off their hands. And so, of course, I said yes. And so I spent a lot of time praying and cutting up pieces of this glass. And I put them in my suitcase, and from Washington State, took them, the whole 48 pounds of glass, to Wisconsin, where we gathered with this group of global practitioners. And we also found some windows, old windows that were no longer used or useful, and that at an antique store. And we were gifted those 4 windows for the price of 1, because they understood what we were going to be doing. But these were windows that didn't serve anymore. They weren't double pane, so they were basically kind of tossed out and thrown away. So we took windows that were no longer useful, and glass that came from story of a church who had damaged windows, and we put them together. And I invited people in the group to get a piece of glass that, as you can see, there's a globe, and they're just small pieces of broken glass. And I invited folks to come and pick a piece of glass that they were drawn to, and to sit with that glass for the whole day, and to reflect on how that glass represented their life, to ponder the sharp edges, the broken pieces, the color, the texture, just how that piece represented them. Because sometimes in life, it feels like our world is falling apart, and we are just in broken bits and pieces. And so just to give some time to think about that, how it feels like we are undone, but also to see that that we are unique. So they each picked a piece of glass, and they spent the day with it. And then I invited them to add their glass to this, and each one placed their piece of glass somewhere in the project. And I had no idea how it was going to turn out. I did have a bit of the swirls, if you saw, and those swirls represented the movement of God underneath all of it, and how we can find form and beauty as we follow in God's movement and God's Spirit. But each one placed their piece that represented them in some place in the mosaic, and then we continued to work together and filled that in until, as each one you can see, each bit and piece of brokenness together with grout was formed into something beautiful. And this is how we took 3 of the windows, and I actually, 48 pounds of glass did not cover 4 windows. And so we actually have 1 window that we could not complete. And I promised that I would bring more glass the next time we gathered together. But that also taught us that the process is never finished, and we have more work to continue to be done. But there was beauty in the undone. And finally, we got the things, and this is what was the result of our broken bits and pieces brought together. And for me and for many who were there, it was this beautiful expression, a monument to God, living and lasting evidence that God takes our bits and broken pieces, the things that we have cast out or we have thrown away that we do not see as useful, and takes those and holds them and honors them, and recognizes that it is dangerous. Our lives have been broken, can be painful, but together with the Spirit of God brought together, we can form part of something even so much more beautiful than we can imagine. And that's what it means to be people of God, allowing ourselves to be used by God to contribute our small piece to something that's greater, that we can't imagine, and that God's light can shine through it, and it's beautiful. And that's the image. This is one way, when we create art together, we can be evidence of something that alone we cannot see. But within the hands of the artist, God, we can be part of something that is life-transforming and life-giving. And it's at those tables where we work together, where we bring our bits and pieces, that God can transform them and to use them for healing and for hope. But we need each other. And I need you, and you need each other. And I am so thankful to the God who invited us to table, who gives us grace, who says, I know you're thirsty. I know you're looking for life. I know that you want something to nurture who you are. And it's there. It's available. I offer it to you. Come without cost. It is free. You are welcome at this table, bringing all of the who you are. And at that table, I will work in ways that are different from you, and I will transform your life. I will interrupt you, and out of it, you will be healed. And that is what hope looks like. That is the evidence of a God transforming who we are into something that reminds people that we and God have a beautiful dream that we can be a part of. Thank you for being a part of my dream and a part of God's dream as you shine and allow God to shine through you in Beverly and throughout the world.